Okay, I think everyone found his seat back. We're situated again, ready for part two. And of course I want to build up on the story that Udo Paltzer just provided about the extensive set of capabilities that Integration Suite offers. And there's one particular topic we would like to highlight, and that is the migration topic. So the migration from SAP PO to SAP CI. And yeah, we like to get our hands dirty. We like to make it happen. So that's why you see this chair here. There is some demo part that we would like to show, to actually go with you through the steps of migration, show what the tool can do, and also the enrichments and accelerations that can be on top of it with the expertise of Rojo. So in short, that is what we want to highlight during this session.
So maybe to get a feeling, who's already attempting to migrate right now from PO to PO? Okay. One. This year, yes. Yeah. Someone else trying at this moment?
Next year.
Next year? Yeah, and?
We will try.
You will try? Yeah, that's coming as well this year, just to get a feeling, right?
We will try.
And? Over here? Later on? Oh, and the last year, okay. So we hope we can encourage you a little bit to start earlier.
Yeah, so for some of you it's a reality, for some of you it's coming very close, very near, and that's why I think this is the place to get more information about it and to also show it in action, and that's what we want to show you today as part of this session. I mean, history about Rojo, I think you're aware with what we're doing as a company. We're working very close with SAP partner in the software area, integration content, but also on this topic very much. Yeah, so not only innovators, but also SAP authors together with SAP. So this is our domain, the integration area, and both PO and CPI we have extensive expertise in. So this is the area where we would like to show you more about. This is it, the migration approach to SAP PO, from SAP PO towards SAP CPI. So the approach on taking on SAP PO and moving to the cloud, to CPI. I think Udo already highlighted some of the aspects that you have to take into account and the tools that are provided to help you here. But one of the powerful aspects is the automation part. Of course, we could look at all the PO scenarios. You might know them from PO, the ICOs, and build them in CI. But SAP has provided this automation tool itself to do an assessment to see what is my PO landscape now like in terms of effort to automate with the tool. And on top of that, it provides a classification in terms of the pie chart that Udo already showed, and we will zoom in a bit on that as well. Even there, we could accelerate more, and that's also something that we would like to show you in the presentation. But it's all about the planning and having a good insight in what is my current PO landscape like. And there are two different assessments that you can do here, and I will explain that. So it's understanding your current SAP PO configurations across your environment, understanding your migration readiness, and in the end, that provides a fit gap analysis to formulate your migration strategy. Of course, the integration advisory is there to help you. Udo highlighted the role of integration content. There's a rich library of integration content available where we, as Rojo, are also providers of this integration content to already use scenarios, templates that are available in CI. So that could be part of your strategy. So you have to prepare, you have to plan, and of course validate in the end. That's the normal cycle as we know with any integration development. This is the step-by-step stages that we distinguish. And what is important here to highlight is the role of the assessment in the beginning. So you have the assessment side of the tool, which we will go through. So you can clearly see how that report shows. I know some accounts already have done this to have an indication, okay, what is my landscape like? But it's also focusing on another aspect we want to highlight is the Rojo service to get a full insight in your SAP PO tenant in terms of consistency across your environments. How in sync is your dev, test, acceptance, and prod, and what are the configurations like in the different communication channels and ICOs? Because you can see this migration as part of a bigger picture. It's also a moment to critically look at the integrations that you're running in SAP PO at this moment, and do those need to be migrated? because it could be maybe you have a scenario running for 2-3 years and you see there's no active usage of it. So if you have that indication, and you see, for example, that some channels are using HTTP, and by moving to the cloud, you don't want to use this HTTP approach and you want to switch to HTTPS, it's also the moment to clean up and to check where are we today before moving into a new house. Hey, what do we need to take to that new house? And is this a chance to update our governance, our naming conventions around integration? It's an important point. Yeah.
Actually, it's a discussion, by the way, the format is a discussion. I jump in anytime. When we discuss with customers today, one of the challenges is, how do I justify to my business, right? Because they think, hey, it's a migration. What do I get new to? But you all know what I'm talking about, but you get challenged like this. But really, we don't see it just as a migration. I could use the word upgrade maybe, because what Sander just mentioned, I mean, there is, with the non-flexible pipeline in PI, maybe sometime you had 20 interfaces that you can reduce to 1. It is possible. You all know those cases. We'll talk about security. Some of those interfaces run for 20 years and you've never touched it, you've never thought about redesigning it. So those arguments are important. Security is really a key point here because with what we've seen around, if I'll talk about HTTP or FTP, how many of them are still around there? I know everyone is having a project to clean it up, but can it be an opportunity? So I really think one will miss the boat if you don't think about it tactically. It's just a technical migration, then I think you miss some opportunities. So it's really things to consider.
One thing I think John just highlighted briefly is the amount of capabilities, flexibility that you have in the integration suite. So rather than migrate as is only, think about how you can unlock this power that is there compared to PO, which is very robust, very, focuses a lot on the B2B scenarios, covers that. But if you look at the flexible pipeline and, for example, with the JMS queues, how you can set up certain scenarios, unlock that potential to get also your integrations to the 2.0 version of today. And that is the ultimate momentum to grasp and to take on. I would, because I promised a demo, I would really focus a lot on this part as well. But here you see the different stages and the phases, especially that enhance we will reach out to. It's again about that exception handling. There was a question about it. We will show that in action too, because there are frameworks around it where we can automate these parts and think about exception handling, that you may want to group certain integration patterns and say, for this, I would like to automate my exception handling and apply it. I will show that in action later in this session. Maybe very briefly, I want to go back to this slide. This is also what Udo has showed. It's again that assessment. So ready to migrate, evaluation required, and adjustment required. When I switch to the demo, I will actually go to a tenant to show how that looks, how do you get the report. So our approach is really to build on the assessment tool by SAP, because it's powerful in the sense that it can do this assessment for you. However, there's also something to take into account, is that with this, you're not there yet. You still have to do the migration. You still have to focus on those red and orange ones to tackle them accordingly. But with the green category, it basically says, like, yes, we have templates available to help you automate, so largely automate, the migration from a PO ICO towards a proper iFlow. And the powerful thing is you can select different patterns according to your wishes. For example, setting it up with JMS queues. It's about how your mapping is handled, how much decoupled setup do you want? Do you want a lot of sub-processes set up by using generalization? It's all possible, and you can select that template. In the red and orange part, you will have to consider some effort additionally on top of it, next to those steps.
So if I can also jump in. Yeah. So, of course, what we're adding to this is customizing it to your own need. Albert, you just mentioned something. You said, I think you asked about exception handling. That's one. But you could have defined your own exception handling, and that could include, in case of this, I would like an incident to be created in ServiceNow. That's not a generic requirement of everybody. It's your requirement, right? So how can we, on top of this, have your own template applied directly? Or your own naming convention for that matter, or your own logging steps that you want to say, I want to apply to all integration, if you know what I mean. So we use the SAP tool, but we enrich it with your specific need, for which we have another tool as well, to accelerate that.
Looking at the time, I do want to take the time to actually show you it in action. There's one next slide about this thing that we mentioned. This is the moment to also critically look at, hey, maybe I don't want to migrate, or maybe I have to make some changes in some of the ICOs, or I have a different strategy for some of the ICOs based on an earlier assessment. And this I would like to show in action. So I have the whole setup here, and it's important to notice that here we're using a service offering to give you insight in your PO landscape at this moment, and it's all live connected. So you see here below I have all my PO CI integration suite, so we can go through the whole step-by-step process, and feel free to ask any questions about every step, because we're going to show it here in action. This is a SAP PO monitoring tool focused on giving insight in your current landscape. So you see here, for example, the different parties, business components, business systems, and how they are aligned over your different environments. It's important because can you imagine if you have more scenarios in acceptance than you have in dev? It means there's a missing, because apparently not according to the following to the right transport mechanisms. There are already scenarios in test or acceptance that are not in your dev environment. This is something that you should spot. It also highlights everything related to communication channels and everything related to PO. So if you go here, you go further down, you see here, again, it's loading the data live for you. If you pick a particular channel, in this case, so these are the communication channels in PO, like for example, what you will see, I will show it separately. You can see, for example, the endpoint configurations. And you can see every single detail and run every single query on your configurations in PO. And this will help with the need of finding, hey, do I have maybe, how many HTTP adapters do I have? How many scenarios do I have that are running FTP? Do I want to address this now? But also how consistent are the different environments of PO? This in combination with what we're just going to show about the assessment tool will give you the full overview.
So if I can add, there's a query, you can query this data now. It's available for you. So if you say for our organization, actually we don't want to do a big bang, but we only want to move integration related to system X, you can now query it, if you know what I mean, because it's about viewing the data in different ways. Right?
Okay. And now I want to come back on the story by Udo about integration suite. So what you see here, this is integration suite. We're looking here into a demo environment. You can see, the different recent activities that we have done. The capabilities are also shown separately, but it's about this migration capability that we would like to address. So in order to do this migration, I have to connect my PO to my integration suite environment. When I've done that, I can do different data extractions, which actually means a run of data out of PO to get it in an integration suite. Let me refresh the browser. And here you can see, so we have been running this particular data extractions, and then you get the latest set of ICOs, of communication channels, of mappings, very important, into your integration suite. Because if you can reuse the mappings that you already have established in PO, it's of course part of the automation. How otherwise could SAP generate this mapping in CI? Let me check here. So here you can see that. So you see, for example, 3 sender interfaces retrieved, 3 message mappings, so it's putting it from the system. Close, sorry. I will soon mirror the screen so that I can also see it here. If I go back, then we have the evaluation. And here, the output of the graph with the green, yellow, and orange, yellow, and red part will show. So if I go here, and I think here, I can see the assessment. So this is your live extraction visualized according to the assessment categories. And this is powerful because here you can see the actual input it will load. It's actually very close to the slide that I showed here. This one. So this is what you will see as a report. You can also download it. For the sake of keeping going forward, I will keep going, but you will see that here it's these different level of assessment will show. Now, what I kind of would like to do is show you the power of migration. So if you have done this, you have a good baseline of knowing what the assessment have said, you know, whether it's easy to migrate or you need evaluation, how is that differentiation between, what's the percentage like? And from there on, you can build your own integration strategy, and that we're doing with customers as we speak right now. If you go to an integration package in Integration Suite, so let me find this one. It's of course the demo SAP migration package. Here we can run the actual migration, because now you have done the assessment, you have an indication about what are the different categories of interfaces I have in terms of how my landscape looks, also how much effort is it to migrate. SAP will give you a ballpark indication of that when the report runs. And now you would like to do the actual migration. So if you go here and you go to edit mode, you have the option of migrate. And this is of course the powerful part, because here your PO is already linked. It already has finished assessment. It does an assessment for you. Now you would like to do the actual migration. And here what you can do is you select the right PO system to connect to. So in our case, that's this PO system. We go to the next step. And here you select the scenario that you would like to migrate. Before explaining this further, I would like to take 1 minute to show you the actual scenario. It's a very file-to-file based scenario, very basic. It will not address the points that we just said about cleaning up things, but it's about to show the baseline of the simplicity of doing a migration, and to have a basic scenario to show you for it, because that's important, that you can see how it works. So if I go back to PO, you will see this actual object here. And this is the ICO with the communication channels. I think this is powerful because now you see how it all comes together, because this is our PO environment that is actually connected to Integration Suite. And we see here the actual ICO with the service interface and the names that you will soon see when we run the migration. So you see it from every perspective. This is our scenario. We have file to file. We have a file sender CRM here on the sender side. On the outbound side, we have a receiver file sender. And it's a very straightforward scenario with the mapping in ESR. Now, if we go to the Integration Suite, we can actually select that one. So if you see SI out prod plan, this is the exact same one that we're here selecting. So we're now about to migrate this ICO into an iFlow into Integration Suite. And here you can see how powerful the tool is. If you go to the next step, it will ask you about a template. And this is what I briefly touched upon. I think Udo mentioned it also. You have a wide set of templates to select. And yeah, for this one, it's relatively straightforward. We don't want to do the JMS queue implementation here. So we go for async 001. It's an async scenario. And you can always find more information about the pattern that you're about to use here. And we can also guide in this process with you about which pattern to pick, the integration advisory. So there are different ways to get to that, that approach related to the template. Then if you run it, you now have here, you can now come up with a name. You see it already, get some details from PO here, which is good to know. And it will actually put it in the description of the iFlow and Integration Suite. If we just type a name here, you see we have done this before, to CI test 3, let's use 3. And then review, it will provide you a summary of what you just have done. So this is good to see. We have migrated from this PO, Process Orchestration System, this artifact with this template, and it in the end created this integration flow. Now, we still have to migrate, so let's press the migrate button. And just like that, the template for the iFlow is created. So you see the sender and receiver that we have with these channel names, and we can actually go to Integration Suite directly to see the artifact itself. You can see here the artifact. This is what you end up with after the first step of migration. And I think this is an interesting part to see, because I did not show the ESR part. It has a mapping. It has these two communication channels that I just showed very briefly in the ICO and PO. And a question about exception handling, you can see that there's this exception subprocess placeholder in there. So it's an empty exception subprocess, subprocess there, but it's not actively handling the exception in the way that you would prefer, or that is still something that can be added on top of it. You can do this manually. You can also automate this, and that's what we will show later. And you see also here how it's decoupled, how you have your message mapping here. Few things we can notice. The FTP connection is not working because we don't have the credentials yet. So that's something that we have to think about. And maybe we want to rename the iFlow. There are some things that we could change.
Sorry, Sander, if I may jump in. When it says credential, I hope it's clear that we migrated, but we don't have the username and password to connect to this end, because that was not migrated by standard. Just so that's why we have read. It means it's incomplete. You still have to take action.
It's only credentials?
Sorry?
Only credentials?
Yeah,
like
in this particular case, is the credential. Yeah. Yeah.
So if you go for more advanced scenarios, there are more things that, like some adapters, for example, that you have to think about. What I'm now going to try is I'm going to duplicate these displays quickly, so I can see the same as you are seeing on the screen. And I would like to show you, because we're going here, how it looks from how to enhance those capabilities. And with the expertise that we have, how you can automate some of these things that you still see that are next steps to take. Both SAP is also incorporating some of these aspects, but you will see how it unfolds. So we go back here again, and then we have this migration assessment capability. It's connecting to the same PO environment, so the information that you already saw was connected to the same system. It's also the system that we're now migrating from. So we're doing everything at once. Here again.
So I want to add to the audience, you understood the other one was the SAP 2, and here it's the enrichment with your very specific, naming convention. That's why this is switched. Yeah.
So what you see here are the ICOs, and you see the status from the SAP report as well. So ready to migrate, you can see here. You can see even import status, whether it's imported or not in CI. So these two, this is an enhancement over it.
So this tool is embedded into Splunk PO assessment tool.
It's an offering on top, but incorporated in this way in the dashboard. Yeah.
Okay. And it pulls all the interfaces directly from the PO instance.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
And from the CI as well, so it brings it together here.
Okay. And everything is sitting on top of the PO assessment tool, including CI interfaces, or CI, because CI has a different app on Splunk, right?
Right. So the idea is that you use the SAP migration tool, which will migrate, but you use this one to add your own flavor to it.
Okay.
And therefore this one is looking at all two together, plus your own template, if I can call it that.
Okay.
It's a way to automate further. I mean, the expertise around it is there as a service. We can help you in any way. It's not, but in this way, we want to visualize it in here to see it in action.
Because the challenge is, after what you've seen now, we saved a lot of time, as you saw. But if you have 1,000 interfaces, you have to go change all the credentials. You have to add exception handling. How can we further get that moving?
Let's zoom in on some of these accelerations we can still do. You see here actually the ICO that we already were migrating, and we have the template now in place in CI. It's this one, the test tree where we just had a look at. Now we can run, for example, renaming the artifact. So it could be that you have a specific naming convention that you would like to change at a later stage, and you can actually do that by renaming the artifact. Of course, you have to maintain that separately, and then according to those naming conventions, this scenario can run. So it's currently executing that as we speak, and you see here it has changed it to closer to the name of the PO. So for example, if you would like to reuse the name of PO, you can do this. If at a later stage, what happens a lot is you first do the technical migration, maybe then you update your naming convention guidelines on CI. You again need a refresh of the naming. You can automate it. Now you see it generates also the link to the particular iFlow. So if we go here, we go actually to the same integration suite scenario. And you can already see, here's a reminder about the Camel upgrade, but you can notice here we have the scenario here. So the naming has been changed because of this automation. Then one thing which is also good, and that we already highlighted there, is we're missing the credentials here. And also this part can be automated, that you make sure that these channels are actually connecting to the source and target application because the credentials are added. And the credentials are currently missing, that's why you see these arrows here. It doesn't have the username and password or client ID, client secret to connect. Of course, here there are two different ways. Like of course, customers would have maintained out of sensitivity the password somewhere else. So it could be an Azure Key Vault, can be manually added also, that we just make the placeholder of the security artifacts in CI, and then you update the password afterwards. But let's run that. So create and configure credentials. So now it's running the creation and configuration of credentials in your actual scenario. Instead of clicking on the link, it should just reflect here, right, if we refresh, because we have the integration suite, pipeline iFlow on display. So let it refresh to visualize that. It's a demo, so give it the time.
Excuse me.
Yes.
While waiting for that,
Yeah.
since you're using Splunk there, is that the Splunk of Rojo, or do we need to use our Splunk?
Normally it will be your Splunk. Both are possible basically, right? But what we do is, because we're helping our customers, sometimes they don't have Splunk, we will not ask you to buy Splunk, right, in order to do this, but then we do it as part of the project.
And how much time do we need to set up if we chose to, let's say, use our Splunk?
It's really just configuration within a day, because it's an existing thing for us.
Thanks for the question. It was a great moment to let it unload on the same time. And here I think it's quite noticeable for everyone. The red arrows, the red crosses have disappeared. So in the background, the integration security artifacts are being generated, are being created there with the credentials. You can opt for an option where you add the passwords later. You can automate it fully when the passwords are received from a central place. And there you can see it brings us closer to actually have a deployable scenario. And that is powerful, because without having any manual intervention right now, we can already thinking about this basic scenario, thinking about deploying it without having actually to touch it manually here. One thing that's missing, or something that we want to address as well, is this exception handling. It was a question from the audience. And we think it's important because every time that you bring an integration flow live, you should think about exception handling. It's your moment to alert, to catch certain errors, and for us it's not complete without having proper exception handling in place. And this can also be mass executed in the sense that you can put it for different scenarios at once. And here we have defined separately a different exception handling that we want to add to the scenario. So if I select this add exception option, it allows you to have the iFlow configured with exception handling. Think about what John mentioned, to ServiceNow, an email alert, to Jira, anything that facilitates your process and automates the resolution of a particular ticket. See, it's still adding the exception as we speak.
I wanted to add something. You might wonder, why is it in Splunk? I mean, there's too little time to show everything, but you can imagine some customers says, even though my technical artifact is green, I can migrate it, but I want to have design time and runtime information together. That's why we're using Splunk, because we could actually tell you that this did not run for 3 months. And the question is it really a green? Or is it green and between green and yellow? So you can decide yourself to save time. But some other customers have said, please don't make it green if you see that the same service interface comes in more than one interface. I want you to warn me of this, because you're basically telling me indirectly there's possibility to consolidate them. So you know there's many things you can think about. Yes.
When you were explaining this, John, just like that, maybe people have noticed, this was first empty, and now we have this call integration flow. We're handling it via Process Direct. And we have exception handling configured according to a specific scenario. And this can be anything that you would like to have to take care of that error notification, so that your team is aware when a scenario runs into an error.
So Sandra, basically what you showed first is SAP's migration tool.
Yeah.
Great capability also to do the assessment and give you almost a ready to migrate scenario, but then you still have left with a lot of manual steps. And if you don't have this capability, then you have to look after the migration. Is this also mass execution available? Because now we do show it with one.
Yeah, of course, for demo purposes here, we're focusing on one scenario to take you through one scenario. But of course, if you have those, let's say, integration errors handling sub-process defined, you can link it en masse to a set of different iFlows to enable that instantly. And that is a very powerful way of automating it, because without touching it yourself, you can have this integration error handling in place. Yeah, sure.
So when you migrate, you need to use the SAP migration tool to migrate currently, because we don't have mass migration yet. So currently you need to migrate it by using SAP migration tool, and then you can enhance, so you run those processes to get the password, credentials, and the exceptions via this plan.
Yeah, and this is only a limited part of what we show. I mean, you can imagine what this allows, where you can dream about to go to the next step further.
You can give the example, one customer, what they did this, but they wanted in that list of steps to also say, I switched off my PO interface. So basically, stop the channel in PI because then I don't want it. And then I'm not seeing messages coming in PI anymore, and I see it coming. Because if you have again 1,000, you want somewhere to see, yes, the consumer is still not going to PO. Because without that, you did not finish as well. You maybe made your technical, but the question is how far do you want to go with it? It depends.
My point was more towards the fact that you still have two tools you have to use. You use the Rojo tool to enhance it, but you have to migrate using a SAP tool.
Right.
You cannot migrate it, so you can't choose the icon on this blank app to migrate.
Yeah, that's correct. Think about the Rojo tool as your own tool, because the whole idea will be that this is only used to align to your own steps, let's say, which could be totally different. And in fact, you can go totally, you define it.
Do you have a case where you, for instance, replicate an interface on PO or CPI, and then maybe use your tool to orchestrate which one is running, which one you want to disable? And think about your kind of availability scenarios for some iFlows. Did you have anything like
Meaning that you have both still running?
Yeah, imagine for instance you have to, for emergency reason you want to manage a second iFlows in another tenant.
Yeah. No, we did not get a case yet where the customer asked for it, but we are flexible enough to be able to. That's the point, because it's all about that we will have to discuss. It's not a tool that we're selling, by the way. It's really just to accelerate your transition. So we'll discuss about your migration strategy, in which you can say interfaces related to finance need to go to this tenant, or if it's in this country, in this, and then we will configure it accordingly.
Imagine if you want to run keep, let's say, the copy of some interfaces that are critical in another tenant.
Yes.
That you can switch in case of problems.
Yes.
It could be your safe approach.
Very good question, actually, because there's other tools around this, like the CI CD. So, okay, we've done just one step. This is your dev, but you have to go all the way to production, right? And you want to use the CI CD, which we also have in place to move it all the way. And that is not easy, because what we've done here, this copy credential is your dev credential. But if I go to production, suddenly I have to copy the production credential. And if you have 4-tier landscape, understand how much you'll have to repeat this stuff, right? And in another way we can automate. But yeah.
So
actually, sorry, one other thing. You talked about JMSQ. We have a customer who said, I don't want to use the JMSQ. I want you to change all of the flows which are going in the JMX, push it to Solas. I can imagine this scenario, right? Because they already decided that Solas will be I'm just giving an example here. And the same thing applies. Then automatically we are replacing these steps with Solas.
Yeah, so the SAP assessment tool is the backbone. And one thing is we're really partnering hand in hand here because you can see how they enforce each other, but also the mass migration will be supported, I think, in Q4 as a roadmap on the SAP side. So it will become easier to do a wide set of integrations. Now, final part is, by the way, you can refresh the trail here, and you will see the steps that have been executed also here. So you see add exception has been done, create and configure credentials. You can find that, and here you can see, for example, what is the name of this particular credentials that are created in Integration Suite. I know I have to speed up looking at the time, but why not even do the last part automated, deploying? There's no need to manually deploy. You can go to UI and deploy, but you can also deploy from here. You can automate deployment at bigger scale of different sets of iFlows together, based on, for example, the needs that John shared. So if you're deploying here, you can actually deploy the particular scenario, and you see it's triggered. So if we go here, you see now not deployed. If I refresh, you will see it's starting doing the actual deployment. So the possibilities are endless here, and you see here the runtime status has been started just now with this timestamp. Just to summarize, looking at the time, because I think that is where we, this is very simplistic how the integration suite comes into play, but I think we gave a strong example of how that goes and what is the journey that you go through. Demo we have done, demo of the automation enhancement we have done. There's a roadmap on SAP side, what to support. There are still areas where this will be incorporated. You can find a list here. Looking at the time, I will go through it. We're always open to help you with a session here in PO to CI because we know landscapes differ. There are individual challenges that you can have based on your scenarios. Maybe you have a lot of AS2, B2B components. There are things to take into account, and we are willing to have a session with you and advise you accordingly and take the next steps. Key takeaways, I think you see the migration assessment from multiple angles. There's an assessment that we have showed here, the SAP assessment together, and in the end, with our help, we are here for you to get you through this journey and to automate where we can to get you successful, smooth migration towards Integration Suite and unlock all the capabilities there. Thank you so much. That was the presentation.
Is there some questions on this, maybe? Yeah.
We have a lot of icons where there are dependencies. An icon that calls another one, so because we don't use VPN, right?
Yes,
so
yes.
How the tool could help in this kind of, because also we have large spaghetti. So
how?
Yes. How the tool could help in this?
Very good question. But the first thing already that's Splunk up, I can run a query to say, tell me all of the flows which depend on each other, especially if the endpoint of one is going to another. Because I can run the query and say where, channel, endpoint, this and this, I'll get this. The question next will be, that's exactly why this is important. What will you want to do with it? Do you want to merge this into one flow? Do you want, you see how tricky it is, because that decision can only be based on your existing pattern that you have in your organization and what you want to do with it next. Then it will have to be a discussion, but the point is, this is programmable for us, because we can program it. It means that we can actually come up with to say, when it fits pattern 1, do this. It's about templating, so we have then to create a template based on what you will want to do.
At the deployment, I think I've understood before that it's also possible to deploy from CI to PO and gradually move to CI. That's still possible, or did I understand?
Now, this one is purely for really if you move from PO to CI. But if, so the question of Linda is more, what if you put it in CI, but you want to deploy it back to PO, meaning that you're not yet ready to go to CI, but you want just to change your artifact as an artifact and still use the runtime engine of PO. We did not encounter that case yet, so therefore we did not include it here. We did not encounter the case. However, the only difference will be the deploy button at this point, because the artifact will already. But a very good question to think about. Even though I think if you do that, you will do 2 steps instead of 1 step toward your destination, if you know what I mean, because you're gonna go back to PO. That's
Everything can gradually migrate.
Yeah.
And not have yet the license cost already.
Ah, okay. Good point. Good point. Timing issue. Yeah. I think we should take this with us. Good point. Yeah.
I have 2 short questions if we still have a little bit of time. First one is naming conventions.
Yeah.
With the Splunk app that you showed the example of unifying the naming conventions for the iFlow.
Yeah.
Is it possible to unify object naming conventions? So like the message mapping names and connector names, channel names, and so on and so forth. So
Yes.
it will be
Yeah.
so all the naming conventions will be applied to the objects as well.
Correct. Good point, because here what the SAP tool does, it migrates your mapping as well, right? But the renaming we did with iFlow, but in fact there's a section, a configuration section, where you put your format of the name. And then we map, you say this variable links to this part of it. So we can actually rename anything, even the connector part.
Okay, perfect. And that's it. That is. So if I have we have naming conventions defined, and they sit in Confluence, we would have to
Copy it here.
copy it into the app in the back end, and then it should just work.
Yes.
Perfect.
The only thing is, we've seen some very complex naming convention which says at the end generate a random number. Then it starts getting a bit tricky, of course, but what if it's a traditional one?
Of course. And the second question was about the interface consolidation. If we have multiple interfaces that do the same things for different countries, for instance, we would like to implement a logical layer
Yes.
during the migration.
Yeah.
Is it planned either by SAP or the
Actually, it is in the Splunk tool. That's similar to your question, because the data is there. We will have to run a query on it.
Uh-huh.
And once we found the pattern, we define that for pattern A, you will have to migrate templates. You saw what Sander was doing. There were templates that you will choose.
Yes.
It will be the same approach that you will have to
Okay.
use. But it will have to be specific to your environment.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Perfect. And do we know when this might be coming out?
For our part of it,
Yeah, because mass migration is the key for it, right? The key
I don't know.
enabler is mass migration.
what do you know? The mass migration part of the migrate.
Yes, planned for H1 2024.
Okay.
That's the beginning of next year.
Oh, perfect.
Yes, this is definitely needed. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
And then consolidation built on top of that would be.
That we have already, but it's custom work. It
Yeah,
means we
okay.
have to identify your template, and then we build a template into the tool, and then we roll it out.
All right. Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you. This
Yeah. So the template will be how do we detect the template, and what do we do next, because that's really a choice of every customer.
Yeah. All right. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other point? Sander, closing?
Yes, I have one. Regarding the business value, you said you can expect some security improvement.
Yes.
But can you expect some cost saving also?
Okay, that's a tricky question. Depends on many things. I don't know. I think personally yes, because the point is, as you are, what we see with a lot of customers is that their SaaS presence is growing big time. The question is, your cost will grow anyway, but are you able to handle it on premise today with the functionality to you? Answer is probably not in all cases, right? So your demand is increasing, so I think this should maybe stabilize your costs rather. But I don't know from PO to CI, I don't know.
We have public customer success stories out there, and it is customer dependent, but we have many customers save around 50%. 50% they save going to integration suite. And I mean, you have to calculate everything, your PO, licenses, the maintenance that you need to upgrade the PO system. And of course you win all this agility. Are you really able to deal with these ever-changing processes, all these cloud applications that pop up on a weekly basis, new government regulations, all these compliance scenarios. Event-driven integrations get more and more important. There's no way to do event integration with traditional PO. You are more or less stuck.
From personal experience, I think the license of CI is cheaper than BI. I mean, it depends what you could negotiate with SAP, of course, but I think it is cheaper.
Everything, also the maintenance, the people that you need to maintain. It's all integration suite is maintained by SAP.
Yeah, same basis, the basis effort.
I think for the sake of the agenda, knowing that there are many exciting sessions coming up, I see we have to complete. Thank you so much, Grazie. And you know how to reach us, you know how to reach us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.